for 4 years.
Good evening, Vicksburg, and welcome to tonight's Monday, May 16th, 2022 Village Council regular session. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll start by saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen.
Thank you all for being here tonight. We're going to take a moment of silence and acknowledge those that we've lost in the village here recently, far, far too early in their lives, so we'll take a minute. And I was going to say, Mr. Mallory, would you take a roll call? But Mr. Wines, would you please take a roll call?
Trustee Olson.
Here.
Trustee Wagner.
Here.
Trustee Reister.
Here.
Trustee Merrill.
Here.
Trustee Holmes.
Here.
President Pro Tem Keller.
Here.
President Frisbee.
Here. All in attendance tonight, thank you. We have an agenda in front of us tonight. Mr. Mallory, were there any changes or additions?
We do have one addition. It'll actually be 6A. I'd like to introduce to the community and the village council our two newest DPW employees. And then we'll have each of them come up and give a half-hour presentation. We'll introduce them and they'll say a couple words. So.
He's kidding, all right?
Yes.
Time is the essence.
45 minutes.
So we have a agenda in front of us. I ask for the council desires.
I'll move as amended.
Trustee Wagner, I'll support.
Motion by trustee Keller, supported by trustee Wagner. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? We have an agenda for this evening. We have scheduled appearances. Two young men right in front of us here. I think Mr. Mallory wants to introduce you.
Yes, if we have this set up for someone else, so they won't touch it. But come on up here, guys. This is, I tell you, and really the backbone of our small village is two departments that I get the opportunity to see behind the scenes. I know the amount of calls, requests. I know the amount that staff puts on people like Caleb Nussbaum and Tyler Wild. And just to see their eagerness and willingness to do an array. I mean, today, I think majority was spending mowing lawns throughout the parks in the village. They, at a moment's notice, might have to get into the sewer and water suits and jump into that, and they're learning all of that. But I thought it was important that the public and council get to meet the individuals that we've put on. And first is Caleb Nussbaum. Both are Vicksburg High School graduates. Caleb is married to Elena with a 6-year-old daughter, Emma, and a 3-year-old son, Jace. So maybe if you want to say a couple words when you graduated high school.
I graduated in 2010. I went to KVCC for like 2 years, and then I decided to get into the workforce, do the welding, and then the corona hit, and that kind of set everything through like a little whirlpool. So then I kind of found something else, and I seen the opportunity in the village, and I always wanted to work for the village, so I was like, I'll throw my hat in there, and I got the job. So kind of got lucky there. I only got to travel very far to work and know the places pretty well, so I like it.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you, Caleb.
Thanks.
Tyler Wilds, our newest employee. Tyler's girlfriend is Michaela, and they have a son who's 6 months old named Mason. And as well, graduate of Vicksburg High School.
In 14, and then I went and did welding, and that's where I met Caleb. And like he said, Corona hit, and then I heard about the opportunity here, and they have better opportunities for me and my family, and so I like working outside, and
Good.
being inside, you know.
Welcome.
Thank you, Tyler.
It was nice too, because I think, I'm going to take the opportunity to give praise on the day in and day out leader of the DPW, Randy Skippers, who truly embodies knowing the value of his team and taking care of his team. There's business is business, but I believe you see from all 5 individuals at DPW, not only the professionalism, but they have fun at what they do. It appears, I think they all get along rather well in time. So on behalf of me, thank you very much. I do appreciate your time. Part of my deal is if they spoke more than 10 seconds, they get to leave the meeting right away. So I will, if the council has any questions or comments for them. But other than that, I'd like to be able to excuse them, President Frisbee.
Absolutely. Welcome, Caleb, Tyler.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good to see you
Glad.
again.
I'm thrilled that we have.
And just to be around that generation with young kids and them talking about that excitement and everything else, it's fun. So I probably don't need to introduce the next gentleman, but maybe the times, Scott and I go back coming up on 30 years now. And he was certainly, I approached him to come down here, and I just think the world of his leadership of the police department. And we won't need to go into all the details of some of the stuff we inherited back in 15, 16 in relationships with the community and likewise. But Scott has really put an emphasis on community engagement with the officers. Post-COVID, we're back to walking 1 block every day in the village, meeting citizens, back to downtown walks during the lunchtime hour, and as well as every business within our village gets a business check every single night due to the police officers and Scott's leadership. So Chief Sanderson, the podium is all yours.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening.
I want to thank you guys for allowing me the time to come and speak with you and be able to review some of the highlights from our previous year with the police department. I've been with the village now for approximately 4.5 years and have learned many things and continued to learn and grow in this position. Tonight, I want to talk to you about our officers and the work that our officers do on a daily basis, along with some of the highlights from last year. I believe that my officers have learned to embrace the guardian mentality of policing. Our officers interact and treat all citizens with dignity and respect. It has been a continued directive of mine that they follow this model of law enforcement, continuing to build trust and legitimacy within our community. With that, I have it's basically the report that you have in front of you. I'm not a big fan of reading word for word, so I will summarize some of the pages here. We'll go to page number 3. The police department, just to give you a kind of an overview of our staffing, the police department patrols obviously within the village of Vicksburg. We respond outside to neighboring police jurisdictions when requested. It has to be a request. We can't just automatically do that. Our officers are not deputized. The police department currently has 6 full-time sworn officers. We have 1 part-time sworn officer and 7 volunteer reserve officers. That being said, the 1 part-time officer that we do have is an officer or sergeant over at Schoolcraft, who is an emergency. We need a part-time guy to fill in a spot if we got guys that are sick or vacations or whatever. He'll come over and give us a hand. And not to go too much in depth with it, but the trend, not only locally but across the country, is less applicants are out there to fill the role of police officer. It's very hard to find an applicant, and probably in the last year I've interviewed 1 person so far that was interested in a part-time position, and it was not a good fit for our department, our village, so that didn't happen. So we're continuing to look. So the staffing is obviously the chief of police. We have 2 full-time officers during the daytime. and one school resource officer. We have 2 officers that also work the nighttime shift. They're opposite of each other. So at any given time, you have 1 night shift officer working, unless there's an overtime detail. And then during the day, you have myself, you have the school resource officer, and then the officer that operates, calls for service, etc. The part-time officers would fill, like I talked to you earlier, would fill vacancies, sick calls, special assignments, help us with parade details. They also ride with those officers to provide added safety. The next page is just a demonstration of our officers, reserve officers, and the longevity, some of the longevity that we have. Some of these officers have not been here very long. Page number 5, just a quick note on that. The police department that I'm aware of has never had a professional collage for the police department done. So I took that and decided that we would do that, and we had one with old-time Main Street picture in the background, which is pretty nice, and that'll be displayed. Some of this some of these officers, Sergeant Stanfill, he's been here approximately 23 years. I won't go through everything, but Sergeant Stanfill is, geez, I hate to call him my right-hand man because he'd laugh at me, but the guy does a great job for us. He works very hard. He assists with evidence room. He helps me with supervising. He's there. He's the guy that the officers will call and then make a determination whether he calls me or not if we have something that's serious enough to do so. And he's been here the longest. He's been here since 1999. So. Some of the other officers that we have, Officer Taylor Herrick, he was hired in January of 18. He has prior experience at Allen Park Police Department, and he is now currently on the day shift, which was a recent move. Officer Skidmore, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but he is now currently our school resource officer. We have Officer Engler, who was a recent hire last year. He came from the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department. He had 4 years in Kalamazoo County. He also had 10 years in counseling, so it was kind of nice to bring that into the program and have that expertise. And then Joseph Geiser is our new officer. He was brought in February. He was currently, at that time, a part-time officer. We brought him on as a full-time officer. And then there's the next picture is a picture of I keep calling him officer, Sergeant Edwards from the Schoolcraft Police Department, who serves in our emergency area. As y'all know, recently Officer Peterson had retired back in September of 21 after 16 years of service with us. He also had some pretty good roles with us with firearm instructor and armorer, as well as a school resource officer at one time. And obviously we wish him the best in his future endeavors. Something that I like to talk about a little bit is our reserve division. These guys help us out a ton. You wouldn't know it. You don't see them a whole lot, but you see them at the parade. You see them at the car show. Without these guys, I wouldn't be able to manage all these street intersections like the race that we had over the weekend. These guys are very important to our department. They not only helping us with those functions, they are there to provide officers. If you have a busy night, we have special details. They'll come in and ride with the officer and provide them that safety support, if you will, that they would need. Again, one I really don't like to talk about, but I will. As we all know, we lost Officer Guthrie in December of 2021. Officer Guthrie had nearly 5 years of experience on this department and served as my school resource officer. Most recently, he had transferred back to day shift as a patrolman. He was respected by the citizens he came into contact with and on a daily basis, and he will be missed by this department. So the community outreach section of this has been a little different, as we all know, with COVID. When I came in here, we had never had a national night out for the community. National Night Out was held in Clark Park for the first time in 2018. We were able to host it again in 2019, but that was okay. And then 2020, of course, COVID started and it got canceled. 2021 got canceled. We're hoping to bring it back here in August. If you don't know, the event is hosted nationally across the country. It's always the first Tuesday in August. The event is designed to heighten crime and drug prevention awareness, generate support for the participation in local anti-crime efforts, strengthen community spirit and police-community partnership, and send a message to criminals, letting them know the community is organized and fighting back. Basically, for me, it's a great way for the officers in this community to get to know the folks that live in the community that they're working for, and that's what we try to do. The summer youth programs that we've done, the department developed those basically for school children to come out, and we've been playing kickball. They seem to want to play the kickball. They like kickball, so we're going to try to pick that back up this year. The last year or two, it's been canceled due to COVID. So we're going to bring that up again in June, and it'll go through the summer months. We'll do a few times here and there. The kids, they really seem to love that. And once again, for me, off script here, for me, the kids, they see the officers as they're human beings too. Yeah, they wear a gun and a badge, but they're just like anybody else, and we can be very friendly. So we try to keep them involved. The school resource position, again, the school resource position has continued with Vicksburg Community Schools. This is a joint effort between the community schools and the village of Vicksburg. We handle all of the schools within the community, so that includes high school, middle school, Sunset Lake, Colby Elementary, and Indian Lake. Some people don't know that we go all the way out there. That's an agreement with Kalamazoo County. So if my officers, a big question I get asked over the time is, well, what happens when your officer sees this on his way going to Colby Elementary, let's say? Well, they can call that out, have a county sheriff come over, or they'll ask for him to enforce it or whatever that may be. So, you know, they're not going out there in the middle between the two trying to do enforcement. Their job is the school. Again, Officer Skidmore was selected. He does have ALICE training already, which ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, Evacuate. It teaches officers how to more proactively handle the threat of an aggressive intruder or an active shooter event. I hate saying those words. I hope that never comes anywhere near us. I'm tired of seeing those events. Of course, we all know we had one, you know, over the weekend in another state, and yeah, it's really exhausting to hear about them. So the rest of the school resource officer is basically his job functions. He's a very busy officer. He goes from school to school. There are many, many things he's responsible to do. Some of the big ones are promoting the profession of police officer by being a positive role model, increase the visibility and accessibility of the police to the school community. That, to me, is the big part of that. That's what we want him to do. Those kids, I know I call them kids, they seem like kids now, but those kids, we want them to see, again, the positivity of being a police officer, and that you can reach out and still talk to an officer, and it's okay, and it doesn't have to be officer. They call him James. That's what we want. That's good relationships within our community. The Shop with a Hero event, we were able to maintain that through the COVID era. The program was started in 2017. We did it until 2020. It looked different in 2020 due to COVID. Children, basically, in a normal setting, the kids are selected by the school. We let the school figure out who they feel should be the ones that receive to be part of this program. The last 2 years, my officers would volunteer their time, go out. We would find out from a parent, like a wish list, if you will, for presents. And we would go out, we would do the shopping, we would do the wrapping, and then in 2020, we actually went to the house and presented the gifts to the kids and their parents. And then in 2021, we actually met the kids and their parents in Christmas Card Lane. Yeah. And gave them the presents, and then they had to make a promise that they didn't open the presents until Christmas morning. So, and again, it's the same type of thing, being positive role models to the community, to the kids, and moving on. The money that we get from that program is donated by an anonymous donor, and it's invaluable. I mean, we thank that donor so much that he does that for us, and this year, maybe with that, if that continues, due to Officer Guthrie's death, his wife Angie Guthrie had decided that any donations would go to the Vicksburg Police Department and shop with a hero program in December. So we'll be using that little bit of money that we got for that program, and I think it'll fund us for this December's program. So we thank her for that. And then there's just a couple pictures with the kids. You can see the smiles on their faces. They absolutely love that program. Some of the other community services that your officers do for you. You got officers at drop-off and pick-up points for the schools. We have 3 or 4 officers. We bounce them around when we have them all working. You have neighborhood canvases. Officers walk door to door in the neighborhoods to talk to residents, getting to know them, and ask about specific neighborhood that they're in. We want them to become more of a person that's in that police car than a police officer driving by waving. I want you to be able to say, oh, hey, there's Scott, or there's James, or there's Darren. Let's stop him and talk to him, or, he's going to come up and chat. So I want that interpersonal relationship there with them. We also do nightly business door checks village-wide. We try to get to every business every night at various hours throughout the night to try to make sure that our community businesses are secure. Might get a call one night that your business door is open, unlocked, and we might wake you up at 4 a.m. But it's a service that I wouldn't say that all police departments do. Certainly not. Vacation checks. Residents call in. You go on vacation. You're gone for a week. You want your house checked on. We'll come out and walk around your house in the middle of the night. Check your doors, your windows, and make sure it's secure. Obviously, if there's a problem, we'll be calling you when you're down in Florida or wherever you're at, just to let you know, and we'll go through that. We do that throughout those. We'll do it all year long, but it's usually during vacation times. We still do vehicle unlocks. If you lock your keys in your car, Vicksburg police officers will respond and unlock your car rather than getting a costly tow bill or a costly unlock bill. So we do very many of those. Customer service checks. Myself, along with Sergeant Stanfill, will pick certain calls that we like to contact. If you've made a police report, we might call you and ask you how it went. Is there anything more you want to add? How was my officer? Did they answer all your questions? It's just another way to try to make it a better service that we provide to our community. Some of the other community and school events, we go to so many different things. And I say I've got Wednesday Winners, I think, started to gather again. The reading in the parks, church meetings, foot races, parade details, football games at the high school, and any other community gatherings that were requested at, we try to get to. Next one, body camera update. This comes up a little bit. The WatchGuard body camera program has been in place now since November of 2020. The officers have become accustomed to wearing and utilizing their body-worn cameras. You see that BWC there is just the abbreviation for it. The system has proven to be invaluable for training, reviewing officer actions, on calls for service, and citizen complaints. Since the inception of the body-worn camera program, there have been 2 citizen complaints made against officers. Upon review of that footage from the incidents, one officer was disciplined and the other complaint was completely withdrawn. So these cameras, I said it from day one, they're invaluable and they continue to be invaluable. So I thank you guys for letting us get those on board. COVID grant relief, this was just something through COVID that we applied for. In 2020, grant was applied and received through Michigan State Police. I believe it was a federal grant, but MSP handled that accounting, if you will, of it. And what it was for was to help police departments with financial burdens of purchasing personal protection equipment, cleaners, other items that were related to COVID pandemic. The amount of the grant that I got was almost $4,700. Some of the items purchased were masks, face shields, protective suits, rubber gloves, cleaning supplies, an air compressor for misting in the patrol vehicles, which would kill any bacteria in the back seats, as well as up front. And some COVID-related signs for our village parks. That was crucial because that was not money that was budgeted in our budget. So we knew we had officers responding to calls that at that time you had to wear a mask wherever you went. And then if you were responding, our officers are medical first responder qualified or trained, if you will, so they're going on rescues. If you have somebody that's sick, they're wearing their protective gear. We would have went through a ton of this. So this was a much needed grant that we got. Something new that's in its very infancy is a police mental health collaboration that's been started countywide. In 2022, Integrated Services of Kalamazoo was awarded a $550,000 grant from the U.S. Bureau of Justice Assistance under its Connect and Protect Law Enforcement Behavioral Health Response Program. The grant will fund the creation of a police mental health collaboration to improve public safety responses and outcomes for individuals with mental health illnesses and substance abuse who come into contact with criminal justice system. This is a Kalamazoo County-wide law enforcement project which will be designed to better assist those dealing with mental health and substance abuse issues with a cross-system crisis response model. Funding will go towards further development of a 24/7 crisis response drop-off center for individuals with mental illness or substance abuse disorders, aligned with behavioral health care and safe policing. This would provide officers with an alternative, this is important with this would provide officers with an alternative drop-off site for these individuals instead of the emergency room or jail.
That's great.
And it will assist in a speedy connection to resources and services for that individual. Some other partnership activities include the opioid overdose response program, along with some follow-ups, those individuals that experience a substance use crisis. A dedicated phone service for law enforcement with on-call mental health clinicians for consultation, that'll be huge. Potential shift ride-alongs for ISK staff with law enforcement and jail diversion programs and services to those individuals that are already in jail. The program is in its early stages. As I said, a council is staffed by the sheriff and all of the law enforcement chiefs of police, and subgroups of law enforcement officers, mental health, and substance abuse professionals will report directly to them on the goals of the collaboration. The idea, I think, behind this, if I summed it up, is sometimes we don't know what to do. What do you do?
Yeah.
You don't, 3 o'clock in the morning, you don't have those resources. And we're hoping that this collaboration with them throughout our county is going to give us another way to help people and get them the right help that they need, rather than, like they've said, the ER room or jail. Some of our other accomplishments are listed there. Some of these things are a yearly update. The weapon system training, crisis intervention training, we just sent an officer to that week-long school. Again, geared towards mental health services and how to handle those folks. Quickly, I'll go through some of the incidents here. The incident heading. The Vicksburg Police Department responded to 4,171 calls for service in 2021. That's an increase of 1,735 calls. Now the increase in calls for service directly relates to the new dispatch system, which accurately reflects all the calls for service that officers handled. It allows officers to enter a dispatch for any type of service or assistance that they provide to our community. In the past, the officers did not have the capability with the dispatch system. The calls for service include any type of call or service that an officer provides to our community. This includes criminal complaints, non-criminal complaints, suspicious occurrence, lockouts, and other miscellaneous calls for service. So in years past, when I got here, the only thing the officers would get is a dispatch on their computer. Mm-hmm. There was no way for them to make notes, disposition the call. There was no way for them to say, well, I'm going to run over here real quick and check on this. I'll put the call into the system. They couldn't do that. They weren't allowed, I guess. So we changed that. Then the new system came in, and we had the full function of that program. So now they're able to track their calls and get, well, basically what I said was get the credit that they deserve for everything that they do. Before, what they would do is go to a complaint, pull a case number, write a report. Well, they might go to something at the intersection of Main and Prairie and say they get there and it's gone. They had to write a complaint. There was no way to track. So they had to go back to the station, write a report. So we've saved them that time from being in the station to be out on the road. As stated, from 2020 to 2021, the calls for service went up. Criminal complaints, as you can see, have went up slightly. Felony cases just barely. Misdemeanor cases have went up. Traffic-related complaints have went up. And assist other jurisdictions have also went up. I think that I would find, I did not include 2019 in this, but I would probably find that we're running pretty similar to 2019. But I think with COVID in 2020, things kind of slowed way down, and then they started picking back up again as times got better. Citations issued, 109 versus 245. I will comment briefly on that and tell you that I am not a blanket enforcement person. If I have a problem area where there is speeding, that is what we focus on. And then that is the same with any criminal complaints that I may have. If I have a problem area, we will focus on that. That doesn't mean that we don't still enforce other areas, but we're going to go to the problem area and we're going to handle that area. Some of the assists to, I've got traffic crashes, 46 traffic crashes investigated by officers, which is an increase from 2020 by 14. 2 personal injury accidents and 40 were property damage. 6 hit and run accidents within the village, so really not a terrible statistic. Assist to other agencies, you can see those have went up. Times are tough. We respond, we do assist Kalamazoo County Sheriff. We once in a while assist Portage PD. We many times have assisted the Schoolcraft Police Department. You have single police officers working in these jurisdictions. Schoolcraft comes over here probably about as much as we go over there. The Sheriff's Department, the same way. There are many deputies down on their road, so they're hurt as well. I like to bring up the Sheriff's Department because the Sheriff's Department certainly provides us with many services that we just don't enjoy because we're a smaller police department. So there's a list of some things that are on that sheet and on your sheets that you see that we just don't have, and they assist us with. Just looking forward after COVID. You know, as we all know, life during the COVID pandemic has looked very different from what we are all used to. The police department continued to work throughout the pandemic, but officers had to change the way in which they worked on calls. Officers were supplied, again, with the personal protection equipment, like masks, full body suits, face shields, rubber gloves to be worn on calls for service. Masks were worn at all times for quite some time, and especially when officers would respond to medical calls where a patient may be infected with COVID. We're hoping that 2022 will bring a calm to the pandemic and that the police department can get back to normal, interacting fully within our community. This police department looks to continue building positive relationships within our community, all the while making the village of Vicksburg a safe and enjoyable place to live. That concludes. Any questions from anybody?
I would like to, prior to questions, highlight a few things Scott mentioned that I think are noteworthy. First and foremost, I would start off with under Scott's leadership, all of the officers have gone through 2 weeks of medical first responder training. This is training that puts them on par with volunteer firefighters at firefighter 1 level. In the director of medical control for Kalamazoo County, Dr. Bill Fales, graciously really supported us. I believe he feels we're only the 2nd police department in the state of Michigan that has trained our officers to that level. And so we have a medical situation within our village limits. Sometimes whether the fire department is on another call, we know we have a medically trained person with the equipment that's going to be on scene very quickly. And the other, Scott certainly mentioned it, but I wanted to emphasize Sheriff Rick Fuller's support of our department. Anytime that we call Sheriff Fuller, he always makes his department available for resources, including training. So those are 2 things I wanted to highlight too.
Scott, I would just like to thank you for this. This is going to be real helpful for me because I like the fact of having the pictures of the officers. Now I will really get to learn what their names are and who they are. So this is going to be very helpful. I thank you for it.
Welcome.
Scott, I got a question and some comments, but I I'm not familiar with Project Lifesaver. Can you explain that?
Project Lifesaver was a project that is basically utilized for children with autism.
Okay.
When they go out, if they are part of that program, they have, I believe it's a GPS necklace.
Okay.
And then there's only certain officers within the county that are trained to be able to go out and track that and find those
Oh,
those
cool.
kids.
Yeah, I have a neighbor whose son is autistic, so.
Yeah.
The comments I wanted to make were, when I had my business here in town, you guys were doing the nightly checks. Officer Guthrie called me at 3 o'clock in the morning, which can send a chill up your spine, and my front door was unlocked. I was a walking zombie at weekend, which I'm right now, but he called and waited there on scene, and he went through the building with me, and I really appreciated that. I was just so exhausted I left my front door unlocked, and most definitely appreciated it when you and I believe it was Officer Peterson showed up on a call, and my 84-year-old neighbor locked herself out of her house. I tried for 30 minutes to break in this house and couldn't do it. I think it took Scott like 20 seconds with a credit card to do it. So, but I was on the committee along with Tim Frisbee and several others that interviewed you to become our police chief. And I've never been so proud to have an officer join this force or to get to know you. I think you're the prime example of what every officer and police chief should be. And I'm proud that you're here in Vicksburg. So thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other comments or questions?
Being downtown, I just see what you guys do, and I've seen people in mental health crises and drugs, I don't know what, rolling in the street, and you guys just handled it so well. It's like you didn't accelerate the situation, you kept it calm, and like you said, with dignity and respect for these people, because who knows what their crisis really was.
Yeah.
But you guys are doing a great job, and I'm proud of you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Scott, thank you for your professionally done presentation. It was very well done. A lot of really good detail, very concise. Just a couple of quick questions for you, and that is, first off, what do you need? If you were to tell this council today, listen, when I step back and I look at my department, my team, outside of us going out and rustling up a few more officers for you, what would really be helpful in order for you to continue to offer the exceptional service that you do?
Don't fumble this, chief.
Don't fumble. I heard that click when you asked that question. Well, you stole my answer, and that was officers. I need officers. It's things pick up. It's getting busier. Continued trainings for us, for the officers, is a huge part, because if training goes non-existent, then we're stuck.
Yeah.
We're not continuing. So we continue with that. That's probably some of the two biggest things that I would think of. Equipment-wise, we're sitting pretty good. We've got some outdated stuff that's gonna eventually come up that I haven't talked to Mr. Mallory yet about, but it will eventually come up. But those are bigger things that there'll be some planning and for the future. But
Good. And one other question, and hopefully the culture that you're building, that we're building here in this community, will draw people here, good people here that want to be part of our community, and I'm hopeful that'll happen. The other question I've got is that what are the other officers, what do you feel the mood is in our community? We've gone through hell the last 2 years. The people are angry, people are at times disjointed. The sense of community and other towns, villages, cities across America, it's not as friendly as others. And I'm just curious, what do you sense the mood is in our community today?
I think the mood's excitement. I think people are feeling a sense of normalcy, getting back to, our events throughout the summer, getting outside and being able to communicate with others and hang out with others. So I think it's an excitement, and I think the officers are feeling the same way. They don't have to worry about what they're walking into. I've said it many times, and I've said it tonight before the meeting. We've got a great community. I think we have a great police department that has a very good relationship with the community. So I think it's just excitement with COVID, hopefully going to become non-existent at some point. That's where I would put it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
I have one more. I have noticed, and tell me if I'm wrong, but I have noticed a lot more traffic in Vicksburg. I mean, have you noticed that being out on the roads and so forth? It seems like every time I come to a stop street, I am waiting for several cars to go by, and that was just not here, say 5 years ago.
Yeah. Well, and I think with the uptick in the community, with people moving to Vicksburg, people are starting to come to Vicksburg more. They come here for the entertainment, I would suspect. So I have seen what to me is a little bit of an uptick with that. Could I put my finger right on that? I don't know where it came from, but it seems more this year. And I don't know for me if it's just because, 19 and 20 and 21, things settled down quite a bit, and then this year seems to be getting back to normal.
Thanks.
Chief, I'd like to, having been a longtime resident here, I can say that I've seen a drastic change for the better in how the department's run from what it was back in the 90s to the engagement that your officers have now with the public. It's night and day different. And the other thing was I personally witnessed my neighbor last year had to have a call that you responded to for a medical emergency. Unfortunately, he didn't make it, but I was just amazed at how fast you guys got there, and you stayed until everything was complete. And that meant a lot, because he was a great old guy, and so I appreciated the care you guys took through that whole thing. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Scott, I want to say thank you as well. The one interaction I've had with a call from Sergeant Stanfill was excellent. I mean, I hope that I'm never in another crisis situation like that at which it occurred, but I mean, the responsiveness, absolutely timely. The picture of professionalism and calm in that type of situation, it speaks volumes to you and the department, so we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, Scott, I'm with everybody, especially what Denny said. I was very proud to be part of the team that selected you, and the transformation that your department has had on this community in the last 4 years, you just can't put it into words. All of us that have lived here, most of our lives have seen it, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Anything else? Thanks for your time tonight.
Thank you.
One last thing that I know Scott would say this is, if he could get one more thing, it would be more volunteers, especially for the parades, the Christmas parade and this and that. Myself and my brother both volunteer for the last few years with that, and I know Scott appreciates that. And I've worked with Jim on the corner, that main corner, and we've only had, I think, one incident where the girl fell. But other than that, we've been pretty lucky. But it takes a team, and we need more volunteers. So, yep. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Thank you again, Scott, Chief, for that. So we have public officials' time up next.
He just got back in.
Just perfect timing. John?
Well, I heard Denny was talking, and I knew that.
You knew.
I'll get you for that one.
Yeah, I know I will. Thank you very much. I'm John Gisler, South County Commissioner, and it's a pleasure to be here. And I've got two things to mention tonight, one pretty quick, and the other one may be a little more elaborate. I thank you for giving me the opportunity. First of all, the big building going in downtown, just west of the current county building, the Justice Center, where I think it's going to officially be designated the Downtown Justice Center, is still on schedule, on budget. In fact, they're going to hang the last piece, if that's what you do, to the last piece of structural steel this Thursday, the 20th. And if you'd told me 2.5 years ago that was going to happen on schedule, on budget, I'd have taken that bet in a minute. So far, it's really looking good. It's testimony to the two project managers, one that works directly for the county and another that indirectly works for the county, but he's the project manager from CMS, the excuse me, the construction manager that's working. And these two guys, in aggregate, probably have 50 years of experience of this kind of thing. So we were in good hands all along, but with COVID and supply chain shortages, I don't know what they did. I think they got the steel early and then squirreled it in a cave somewhere in Allegan County or something, because, you know, structural steel is tough to come by, and yet we've got everything we need. That's the short one. The long one is, I want to explain, if it's at all appropriate, and if it's not, tell me, you know, shut up and sit down. I want to explain the vote that was taken on the 19th of April to begin the process that will lead to condemnation of the cottage on Gordon Neck Lake. That was a very, very difficult decision to make, because it involves so many people who had grown up, you know, spending summers there. It was a summer lake house for a big contingent of descendants from the original 10 co-owners. There were 5 couples that owned the property back in 1960, I think, and the county then started putting a park together in 61 or maybe 62, but they said, wow, we'd really like to get this property, this private property that's in what we now are surrounding with a park, we'd like to have that too. So they made an offer to purchase the 4 parcels that were there. 2 of the parcel owners said, you know, have it, you know, make us an offer and we'll sell it to you. But the 2 additional parcels, and they only total like 1/3 of an acre, so it's small stuff. It was individual lots basically back then. They said, no, we don't want to do that. And the county said, well, we're going to start proceedings to condemn the property and take it via eminent domain. And nobody at that time liked that. And it wasn't even a county commission, by the way. It was a board of supervisors. Township supervisors served in the place of the county commission. Anyway, level heads prevailed, and they said, look, this we can work this out. Nobody's going to like this. It's going to look bad. It's going to be ugly. Let's just find something else. And so the 10 co-owners, these 5 couples, signed an agreement with the county that said the county would provide them with key access to get through the gate and into the property year-round, 24/7. And in return, the county would get first option to purchase when the last of the 10 passed away. And it would not be inheritable, it would not be sold or leased or anything else done to it. These 10 people, 5 couples, said that works for us. And so their descendants now, many of them grandkids and some children, but you know, this was done in 1963 when this agreement was signed. And you know, the county lived up to their bargain, and then the last descendant, or last owner, co-owner, Dr. Talanda, died in the summer, I believe, of 2019. So it's been almost 3 years now, and there's been a big stink. It's almost like a lawyer guarantee for, what do I want to say, a guaranteed job for life, to work on this, either for the descendants or for the county, frankly. So attorneys are making out really well, but it's ugly and it's nasty. And when you hear the people that have grown up using that as their family's lake cottage, it tugs at you. I mean, they had great memories, and I didn't want to squelch those. But on the other hand, the county is going to, you know, proceed, because we had an 8-3 vote that basically hinged, in my estimation, on a decision that came out of Grand Rapids probate court about a year ago, April 23rd of 2021, and Judge Murkowski, David Murkowski, said that 1963 agreement is still valid. And you know, a contract's a contract. We're a nation of laws. I'm sorry. But also he did say about, well, it wasn't even halfway through his 12-page opinion, he said, this is, you know, in my experience, 15 years on the bench, I have never seen a family have such animosity for one another, because not all the family members wanted to find some way of hanging on to it. Many said, not the majority, but many did say, look, our ancestors made a deal. We got to abide by that deal. And it was really because of Murkowski's opinion saying, you know, 63, you know, there's no expiration date on this except when the last of the 10 dies. And it's not like a drug or, you know, food. It doesn't automatically expire at some point. So that's what prompted my vote, and I would probably say that many of the other 7 votes that voted to begin the, I think it's called a resolution of necessity. And if there's a lawyer in the crowd, and I'm looking at you, that is, I guess, the first step that will lead toward condemnation. But I don't think the attorneys have, you know, been fired yet. I think there's still likely to be some stink. It's just I wanted to explain to you how I came to that conclusion to vote the way I did, and many others did as well. Thank you for humoring me and letting me explain what is just a, you know, it's a nasty kind of thing. You hate to get involved in it, but in the I was first elected in 2010, and I've never had something like that tugged at me big time, that I wound up having to vote against some real nice people. Yeah. But I did. So, thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John, for explaining that. Yeah, it'd be a very difficult position to be in, and especially as a family, I can understand it. Having a cottage ourselves that is 80% surrounded by a church. We're celebrating its 100th year this year. Grandpa built it in 2022. It would be devastating to have them try to evict us out of their property. So, but a contract's a contract. You're absolutely right. Thank you again for that, John. So we have time now for citizens' comments on the agenda items, and agenda items only. You'll have opportunity later on to speak to non-agenda items if there's anybody that would like to talk about the agenda tonight.
We do have online, so we'll, Mr. Ball and I will proceed, if you're okay with Mr. Frisbee.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Mr. Ball, if you can state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes on agenda items, please. Go ahead, Mr. Ball.
He's muted.
I'm gonna ask you to unmute again, Mr. Ball. Okay, you're unmuted. You should be able to go ahead. You're obviously able to hear us, Mr. Ball. I don't know if your speaker is not working or if you can go on video. You've gone ahead, you're indicating now that you do have your speaker on, so do you want to try speaking one more time, sir?
Well, maybe he'll like to speak for the non-agenda items that will be coming up.
Mr. Ball shared some comments with me.
Okay,
And if
do you
can
want
get
to
it-
try, I'll try one more last
Okay.
time. We'll ask you to unmute Mr. Ball and. Yeah, it's just not picking up on your end. I apologize. Do you want to, how do you want to proceed, Mr. Frisbee?
Well, we obviously can't hear him, so we'll have to move on.
Can you call in?
We're not doing it anymore.
I think, the-
Can I pass on his comments or not really?
Maybe during, it's up to President Frisbee.
yeah, let's just do that on trustees' time.
Okay.
So we have approval of the agenda, consent agenda in front of us. We have minutes from our regular council meeting, our past council meeting. We have warrant reports totaling $269,252.48. May 20th, Pavilion Farmers Market. May 21st, the Michigan Disc Golf Hall of Fame Classic. May 30th, our Downtown Memorial Day celebration. June 1st, our Downtown Streets, the commercial video shoot. Maybe Alex could share that with us a little later. June 8th, gazebo, the Vicksburg Pathways graduation ceremony, and June 10th, the Vicksburg Old Car Festival. June 13th, the Disc Golf Course Sasquatch Open, and August 20th, Farmers to Table Market. And there was no correspondence. So was there any changes or corrections, additions to that minutes?
President Frisbee, Trustee Holmes, I would ask on page 3 of the village minutes, under item B, that it be changed to Holmes had prepared comments. It presently reads, Holmes had a pre-planned speech. Thank you.
That's noted.
Yes.
Also, Mr. Frisbee, so you're aware, we're not involved in the commercial video shoot. It's a company that requested to use our sidewalk as they
Oh, yeah.
videotape some bicyclists.
Nice, all right. So I entertain a motion to approve, or?
I move to
Counsel.
approve as amended.
Trustee
Mr.
Holmes?
Support.
Trustee Keller, motion to support as changed, and trustee Reister, support. We'll have a roll call vote.
Trustee Merrill,
Yes.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Motion carries. So we have some council action items in front of us tonight. I think Jim was going to present the third quarter budget amendments on the video screen.
Separate glasses.
I didn't ask, we had another citizen on here if they wanted to speak, but, I didn't have any indication of that.
We're hearing you in stereo.
It's a late echo.
And we'll work with it, if we can move along, try to reach out to Mr. Ball if it's acceptable.
That'd be fine, Jim.
All right. I see Mr. Ball's on, if, I'll text him, so we might take a break here to give him a call, but third quarter amendments. It was easier in discussion if we share a screen. This is just a standard thing that each year that we do with the council. We've gone through all of our funds through the third quarter. We listed this out. We did send pre to the meeting to the council. All of the amendments that are listed. There are some that are in red that are just staff movements, do not need council approval. But in the past, if you're good with it, Mr. Frisbee, we can make a motion all encompassing to the recommendations provided. It is our goal, I've conveyed to staff, that I'd like these inputted into the system by week's end, because each meeting we have with the 3 significant projects we have going, you'll see amendments presented at each meeting to ensure that we're bringing this budget on the books. It'll be well under, but on the books, making sure that we're going through those procedures. So I can ask a specific or answer a specific question. You'll see a lot more golf course ones at our next meeting when the revenue is specific to the date and that, but nothing's jumping out of me than any previous year. It's just the additional work with the downtown USDA project, as well as the Oswald Park building and the pole barn at DPW. So.
So we all had an opportunity to review the amendments, and
I have a question. Jim, I know why we're doing these for accounting purposes. As you mentioned, this is quite an extensive list, and when you go through it, it covers a lot of road. I've been doing this 3 years, and I'm just curious as it relates to experience. Is this what all municipalities do as it relates to looking at moving money from various budgets and accounting for various spending? Because again, we're covering a lot of road, we're covering a lot of issues, and it seems as if we're encompassing a whole lot into an amendment is what we're doing, and that's why I just would appreciate your comments on that.
Yeah,
Jim.
we're required, as all municipalities and government entities are, to utilize an amendment procedure on your fiscal year for anything that might change from when we presented it in June. Before, in the village of Vicksburg, at the last meeting of the year, I could produce an Excel spreadsheet that just, I can hit one button, it automatically balances it, put it in front of a council, be about 59 pages of Excel spreadsheet numbers with no narrative, and say, would you approve these amendments so the budget balances? What I committed to in 2016 was a more transparent, where exactly we were using money, the majority of this money, and I think all of it. This is part that I do, and I believe it's 100% is staying within the department and funds. There isn't any inter-fund movement of money. We do, and this is more line item because of the auditors that we've used the last couple years have us do that in the fall, so this saves me work in the fall. And it a little bit of laugh because staff has to I do most of this work at night and then come in the morning and want especially on the staff movements, to make sure that where we said something was going to be debited, it gets debited to as a budget, and it's as many invoices come in, it's not even a mistake. It's just kind of how I want it done. So I don't want to get too long-winded, but all municipalities are required. They might not go into the narrative description like we do, but it is required. We will receive an auditing comment if I have one fund that expends more than we budgeted, even if we have the reserve money. And that money's supposed to go in front of the council, approved by the council. In this village, in not the too distant past that's what caused auditing comments. They were moving money from different funds, not by this procedure.
I appreciate the comments, and it's consistent with what we've done over the last 3 years, the transparency you discussed. For those that are not aware what's on the screen, I would ask you if you're interested to take a look at it, because the level of detail that's being provided and how your monies are being spent, how they're being allocated and assigned, I think it's really important for us as citizens to understand the governance in which the village is managing the taxpayers' dollars to the extent that it is, and the explanation that's being given, and that's why I really appreciate your comments, Jim.
Yeah, just on what we're looking at here, I mean, the $130,000, someone would say, how did you miss budget 100? Well, it's a debt service principle. We didn't know how much of a draw we'd have this year through the construction season, and that's our payment on that draw. But that's the top figure, and it goes down, I think, I list out a $56 movement, which is well within my authority to move, but like I said, it's just documented. I make this document available to anyone that asked it. But it keeps us on task as a team internally, and this is my contribution to probably 30 hours of work for Michelle. Michelle will take it from here and then put it in the system, and then we'll do it all again next week. And that's pretty much done. It's done internally every week, but we get pretty intense when we hit May and June being the last 2 months of the year.
Yes, sir.
President Frisbee. And this goes back to your mandate, that the best practices that we talked about 4 years ago, especially when Rick and I came on the council, and it also says why we haven't had an auditing comment in how many years in a row now, so.
Yeah, since the 15, prior to all of you. So.
And it's a very good tool for us sitting here at this table to be that engaged with the budget. I know from my earlier days on the planning commission, when talking to the former management, do you even have a budget? Right? I would sit in on a couple of the meetings towards the end of the year, and as Jim said, there would be 56 pages of changes at the last minute, and you just didn't have enough time in a meeting or a setting to go through that. So this is why I think Jim does this, to keep us all engaged on a quarterly basis, understand where the money's going and why. And it is a best practice. Any other questions or comments for Jim on this? Any clarification on any specific budget move? Well, I think that's approval not to make you read each one openly and out loud.
We have the opportunity to read them.
Yes, absolutely. Well, we've got the staff was requesting affirmation of the budget amendments. I asked, what is your desire?
Trustee Wagner, I'll move that we approve the presented third quarter budget amendments.
Trustee Holmes, I second.
Trustee Wagner makes the motion to approve the budget amendment, and Trustee Holmes supports. We'll do a roll call.
Trustee Reister,
Yes.
Trustee Wagner,
Yes.
Trustee Olson,
Yes.
Trustee Holmes,
Yes.
Trustee Merrill,
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller,
Yes.
President Frisbee.
Yes. Motion carries. Thank you, Jim. And you have budget employee benefits for the fiscal year 2022, 2023. You wanna
Yeah,
talk
if
about?
you're good with it, I can put Mr. Ball on speakerphone. So,
Jim,
yeah.
I'm outside the building. I'm coming in.
Oh, Mr. Ball's outside the building. He's coming in.
All right.
If we get a camera panned on this door over here, we'll be seeing him. That's another advantage of this village. That's only 2 square miles. So,
That's right.
you know,
House in the Vatican City.
there
He
we
just
go.
lives over there.
There we go. Real quick on the employee benefits, while Mr. Ball's coming in, really we're looking at healthcare, vision, dental, and disability. I will pass out a document to the council. And on that this year, we received our initial quotes that I've included in the packet. We were looking at about a 7-8%, just speaking healthcare now, increase. And there was an opportunity when we started looking at our data points to request a more in-depth analysis of our investment into healthcare and how it's used with our employees. So we went through that process, requested it, and we're one of the very few municipalities, but receivers from Priority Health that met the criteria that we could move into an additional savings program. So our employees will receive the same identical health care that they did in the previous fiscal year, but it is due to the use of the health care, it's only increasing 2%, or on raw dollars, about $3,500 in total. So that's a pretty positive thing, I felt. It took a little bit of extra work in meeting Chip up at Nolte, but we went through those exercises. So healthcare, really happy with. And on raw numbers here, we're proposing in the 22-23 fiscal year total investment of $145,717.68. Going back to the budget we inherited in 16 and 17, that was in excess of $152,000, so $7,000 more 6 years ago. In the year prior to that was 170-some thousand. So again, we're staying on top of it. We are certainly providing important benefits for employees, and I'll pause there to answer any of the healthcare. The other three items are less than a 1% impact over the previous year. So our recommendations are to stay with the same vision, same dental, same short and long-term disability providers and carriers. So be happy to answer any questions. The motion I'm looking for is to be able to enter into the contracts with these companies. We, a couple years ago, switched to our fiscal year, so these plans expire June 30th, and it would enable me to enter into the contracts, which has to be done 30 days prior to July 1st, but it will start July 1st. The other uniqueness about this program meeting this criteria is 16 months from now, it will be reevaluated how much we actually used it in the fiscal year. And if we come under their projections, we'll be entitled to a 50% rebate.
Oh, wow.
So if we save $6,000, we'd be getting $3,000 of that back. So.
Sir?
Just one question, Jim. I'm curious, out of all the village employees, how many are accessing or taking advantage of the, let's say, healthcare that we're offering?
Everyone except Alex Lee and myself, which that saves this village about $29,000 that we exercise taking our healthcare in our retirement occupations.
Thank you.
So we need to enter into this agreement prior to our formal approval of the 2022-2023 budget.
Correct. It'll start July 1st, but the rules of the insurance company, they need more than 30-day notice. And this is, each year it's been done this way. So this would be approving the village manager to enter that agreement that we'll be providing these benefits. Then you'll see the detailed numbers, that $145,717.68. how it spells out once we start applying it to the budget that's coming up the next 3 or 4 meetings.
Well, I don't know how you've done it. The head count's gone up and our costs have gone down, so good job.
Yeah, I'm pretty happy at probably 30 hours of looking and searching and figuring it out, but.
Any other questions or comments of staff? He's asking for our approval to enter into the contract for the 2022-2023 healthcare benefits. Yes, sir.
Jim, do we, much like every other contract, does this go through a competitive bid every year? Or do we have a limitation on pool or anything like that? But-
No, it went through a competitive bid. The companies were the Priority Health, and then we did a level funded option with Priority Health, and then Blue Care Network and HMO, the HSA, and then United Healthcare was the fourth option that we analyzed to determine not only benefits, but what the investment would be for the village. So each year we do that.
Perfect. Yeah, I was confident we did. I just wanted that expressed for those watching at home.
Good question.
President Frisbee, I'll make the motion that we approve Manager Mallory to enter into the contracts with the appropriate entities here to execute our 2022-2023 fiscal year employee benefits.
Trustee Olson, I second.
Trustee Wagner makes a motion that we enter into the employee benefits agreement, and seconded by Trustee Olson. We'll do a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Holmes?
Yes.
Trustee Merrill?
Yes.
Trustee Olson?
Yes.
Trustee Reister?
Yes.
Trustee Wagner?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller?
Yes.
President Frisbee?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you very much. And this is something that's probably gone under the radar a little bit, but I think it's going to be a tremendous step forward for this community. And Jim, you'd like to talk a little bit more about the Veterans Memorial?
Sure. Under the Veterans Memorial, it's kind of our next project. One of them that we're looking at in this 22-23 season is to get an appropriate memorial. Mr. Lee has worked. I've asked him to work with the Historical Society, but he certainly has taken the point on identifying a location that was acceptable in the historic village. From there, we moved, and again, I have to highlight the relationship with Frederick Construction, and Mike Frederick is so kind of put the ball in Mike's spot. And here tonight in front of the council is an opportunity to enter into an agreement with Eckert Wardell on their proposed services. Part of their proposed services is they are donating half of their investment to this project, and Frederick Construction is donating 100% of theirs to work together to provide the necessary design services to assist the village with the design of what this park would look like. So tonight, we're asking for a motion and support approval for myself to enter into that contract on behalf of the village of Vicksburg. Our goal is to be able to dedicate that new memorial by November 2nd of this year. We'll be as well looking to engage in a fundraising activity and potential grant opportunities that we're exploring.
Jim, was the Historical Society, did you confer with them to keep it into the realm of the early 1900s look or whatever?
That it would be appropriate for the land, yeah, and that's part of what this will do is come up with the design. We've looked at other memorials across the country and explained, and then Frederick's team has
offered their input, and now it's moving to the next level where we can get professional renderings and
Okay,
that
so,
done.
at this point, we still don't have a particular design. It's still in the process of.
In a rough concept, we do, but we want to turn that over to the professionals that will then aid in determining what this type of investment would be to the village.
Yeah, I would like to
So-
see it stay, this is a historic village.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that the memorial should be on a historical, the
Right
look
now-
of it should be historical, not modern.
That will be passed along. From the rough concept, it is far more historical
Okay,
in my
'cause,
perception of it.
like when I go over to the cemetery, the old cemetery, you see some really neat memorials over there.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to see something, if we're going to put this into a historic village, then it should look historic and not modern. And that's the way I feel about the village itself, too. Thank you.
President Frisbee?
Yes, sir.
The current Veterans Park, I've displayed my discouragement of ever calling that piece of dirt a Veterans Park, and so I'm all for this monument, finding a more suitable location, believe me. Just curious, because there has been so little discussion about this, and looking at all the properties that the village owns, how did this location become the place where we decided to place this memorial?
The significant amount of the discussion took place with the Parks and Rec Committee and goes back multiple years. It's been brought to me mainly because of the lack of a memorial in town. And when we have the Veterans Day recognition ceremonies, they weren't even done in so-called Veterans Park. There's if people who don't know, it's by the bridge as you enter town on Prairie Street. It's a very small piece of land with no parking attached to it.
Yeah.
So we looked at where best could accommodate what we felt was an appropriate memorial, as well as for those events, parking and people to be able to see it. From there, we entered into conversations with the Historical Society on the historic village grounds, and have proceeded forward in that manner.
Okay, so the historical village, their council was in on this whole thing? I mean, in other words, they were contacted?
You're talking the Historical Society?
Yes.
They were part of the conversations, yes, and had input and are in agreement to put it there.
Okay.
As we explained to them, the property is controlled by the council and owned by the taxpayers.
Right.
So ultimately, it would be this council's decision when we progress to that, but they have been solicited, had input, and are in agreement, this is the best location.
Okay.
Yes, and I believe the time that Alex had met with the Historical Society was back in February, when this was coming to the conceptual stage, so that was when this was kind of starting to be presented to them about picking locations and style and things like that.
Okay, thank you.
That was at the formal board meeting of the.
The Historical Society's meeting that Alex was present with.
Right, but we've had multiple conversations with people that the Historical Society identified as the ones to.
Jim, I'm just curious, has there been any discussion with the local VFWs or Legion Halls in the area, knowing that those are the men and women that we're honoring? I'm just curious to what extent that may have happened.
There will be. We felt the next stage was to get some conceptual designs and also the estimated cost to see if it's realistic to pull off by this November. So that's where we're at, but that's certainly on the punch ticket list items to do, as well as to then identify, once we know the approximate investment it will be, to identify potential funding sources other than general fund revenue.
you're going exactly where my thought was, which would be, it would seem that these organizations would have a vested interest in something like this, and they'd be very committed to supporting it to the extent that they can. And the final comment that I have is that back in 2019, I shared with staff something that I saw when I was in a neighboring community. Well, it's about 5 hours away in Indiana, but the fact that they honored those that served armed conflicts by banners that they put on the lampposts within the village, and those were actually paid for by the family, and they would rotate it got so popular they rotated them out, and I believe, Jim, you even were somewhere in Virginia and saw something similar. Would like to see consideration for that, because I think that takes it to the next level where it makes it very personal, where we're actually honoring those that did serve, and it states what branch they are in and what conflict they're in, and it shows that their military photo on this 3x3 banner that, again, does hang very professionally on lamppost. And so, again, would just ask staff to consider that as we're putting this well-deserved and memorial together.
There has been a lot of internal discussion amongst the different committees in society that brought us to the point of it being where we've recommended, right? I mean, it's got parking, it's got open green space, it's got a pavilion, you know, for speakers and for the honor guard. So, you know, if during these thoughts and conversations, if you have a better idea, you know, bring it to the table. But this is one that's just kept bubbling to the top, and Historic Society's got their buy-in with it. Parks and Rec has been actively involved in this. So, and to have an opportunity to work with Eckert Wardell and, you know, donating half of their resources to it, and Frederick Construction giving 100% to it is a pretty amazing.
I think it's important to note to the council and public too that that was never even asked for, suggested,
Yeah, right.
or anything. I asked, I felt we were at the point that we need formal concept designs that we could show to people, get input from there, much like the process we went through, and have been in discussions, reference of upgrade to Village Hall, and this is what I received from Mr. Frederick, was that offer, very, very gracious on both counts.
Merrill here. I serve on the Parks and Rec Committee, and Alex gave a presentation, and we talked about placing the memorial at the historic village, but it was quite vague as to what it would look like, and we were going to be gotten back to. And so this is the first time I think that I'm seeing these things. And I don't know about others here sitting here. It's the first time they've seen these or not.
It's, if I can, it's because there was nothing to show before.
Okay.
Other than different ideas from different communities, and that's what we're presenting in front of the council, is to move to the next stage, and then we'd get input from Eckert Waddell when they put together the concept renderings.
Okay. Well, I don't know if others have looked at this, but there's a proposal to remove the fence. And I just, with small children and pets, I'm not sure why that would be removed. Just this is all we have to go by. The second thing is with small children and pets, I personally kind of like that fence to exist. That's just me, my personal opinion. Also, with the gazebo here in the background, if this proposed circle with a half wall, 30% half wall, if that's placed directly in front of this gazebo, I mean, from a design standpoint, to me, it's like having two major focal points conflicting with each other in style and both fighting for attention, equal attention. And I didn't know if the Historic Village had talked about possibly putting it to the east side of that town hall or the west side of that town hall instead of directly in front of the gazebo. And I think it was talked about at the Parks and Rec meeting of putting it right in front. But I'm just here to say that from design standpoint, I think it's like they're fighting each other for attention. And this just looked way too modern for, I think the mission statement for the Historic Village is up to 1930. And to me, some of these drawings, like at the dead end of Kings Highway, the veterans display there, it stands alone, whereas this has to be harmonious with the Historic Village. So this, I don't know, this isn't even in Kalamazoo, but it's very modern looking. And when you walk through the old cemeteries dating 1930 and older, you're going to see obelisks and things like that. So maybe there's a bench, and I know I'm going too far, but I just really feel strongly that it kind of needs to look like it belongs in its surroundings. And
I agree with that.
that's just, I've been on the Historical Society. I feel very passionately that our veterans be memorialized, but this just looks like the 60s to me, not old. That's all.
President Frisbee?
Yes, sir.
And I appreciate everybody's input. We're kind of going like we did with the Village Hall thing a meeting ago. We're not building anything. All we're doing is looking at conceptual drawings. The experts, the architects are going to come up, they're going to take input, and we're not approving a park being built, a memorial being built. It's to get some conceptual drawings in front of us that we can approve or disapprove. We can change, we can augment them, we can change the location, we can do all that. But the Historical Society has determined that they would like that in their area. They're on board with it. So I appreciate everybody's comments. I don't want us going down rabbit holes that we don't need to, because all we're doing is just letting them go ahead with the experts and get drawings in front of us so we can look at them and say, yes, this is great, no, it's not, and move on from there.
Good
So.
point. Thank you, Carl.
If I appreciate those comments, Trustee Keller, and the one thing that I would ask then is that we be given the information, maybe like we were with the infrastructure project, where we actually reviewed the information before we came to council, so that we're not looking at something and then voting on it. I think I hear passions within the council, which I respect and appreciate your perspectives, and I think it would be helpful if something like this that is emotional, and it should be, this is about history, this is about our veterans. Let's take time to make sure that whatever we put up there for eternity does fit the way that, this community and those it served. I think it honors them correctly. If we could have that information before we come to council to vote on approval of it, I would appreciate that.
There's many steps that will all come in front of the council, as always is done. But they start with a drawing by experts who do these things. There'll be requests to solicit grants when we identify those that will need council approval before we submit them. There'll be the plans that are finalized, the funding finalized, all comes in front of the council.
Okay, Chris.
All right.
Go for it.
So in front of us is a request of staff to enter into an agreement for that initial phase of the development of the Veterans Park.
President Frisbee, I'll make the motion that we support the village manager to enter into those contracts to start the conceptual phase for the new Veterans Memorial.
Trustee Holmes, I second.
Motion made by trustee Wagner, second by trustee Holmes. We'll ask for a roll call, please, Christian.
Trustee Holmes?
Yes.
Trustee Merrill?
Yes.
Trustee Reister?
Yes.
Trustee Wagner?
Yes.
Trustee Olson?
Yes.
President Pro Tem Keller?
Yes.
President Frisbee?
Yes, motion carries. I will say, the only thing I heard about that, questioning the park, was I think now that you clarify about the vision of 1930s, the question was me, are we going to honor our Vietnam veterans? And why wouldn't you? Because it's a historic village, so. Korean vets, right? So that was the only thing, right, go for, made sense, so. Some of the ideas, I believe, are just to honor the armed services of different branches and not specifically individual wars.
Right.
But there's a lot more to come in that regard. So that takes us down to village manager report.
Yeah, we're really halfway between third base and home plate here on the downtown project. It's scheduled to be completed on time, May 27th, minus right now 2 items, and that's both on back order due to supply chain issues. We've talked about the fence that'll be downtown, and another component that's not impacting services at all. Saw the paving get done on Prairie Street, on Mills Street. Michigan Avenue will be scheduled for the week of the 23rd. By the end of the week, there's a small curb to be completed on Washington Street, which will have the cement company back. There's a couple down at Kalamazoo and Prairie Street on the sidewalks that will be put in and finished there. We had the dog stations, the butt huts, the trash cans, bike racks all put out. There's 2 more benches that will be put out on Prairie Street and 2 more trash cans that are moored by Oswalt Park. So and looking forward to that, and it'll all be striped on the 23rd. Right now, either more than likely the Tuesday after Memorial Day, we'll bring in street sweepers, and all the curb streets in town will be swept, all in preparation for the grand opening on June 2nd. So I'll pause there if there's any questions on the downtown project.
If you're gonna have the sweeper come through, can they do the big parking lot? There's just a lot of asphalt in that, just the street sweeper could suck it up. It's.
I'll have to ask if
Slip and slide
that's
out
part
there.
of it. The bid that we received was only for the streets. So we can look at that though.
Any other questions, comments? I do have one question, and I think somebody's watching that'll get the answer tonight, and excuse my ignorance, but in Oswald Park, where all the gravel's being set now, off of the sidewalks, what is a long-term, is that the ultimate ground?
Yeah, that's
that
the
we're leaving?
material that will harden, and that's the material that was designed there.
That does harden it. It's not pea gravel, so it'll set up and it'll be a
it's not
firm.
pea gravel.
All right. Compact it, and it sets up. It can be walked out easily, not tracked around, and
Correct.
that's what I didn't know if there was another layer going on or if that was it, but,
That's it.
all right, thank you.
Relative to Oswald Park, I think the trees just went in today from Prudential Nursery. Those are looking excellent. Those are gonna be fantastic.
Yeah, the next couple days, the landscape will be finished there, and the borderline mulch will be out, and so
Landscaping is beautiful.
then we just have a few more things and looking good to go.
Light post?
And that's all, if there's no other question on Oswald Park, right, but that is the update. The time capsule was re-put in, so people know it was 3 foot off the mark of where it was when we extracted it, but it is now back where it was intended to be in 1970, whatever that they put it there. It's actually going to be under that. So.
Jim, are you saying it moved, or it just wasn't
I don't know.
identified correctly?
It's one of those mysterious things we inherited here in Vicksburg. I don't have an answer to it. It just took 3/4 of a full day to find
I
it.
remember it being moved. And now, I remember since then, it got moved some way, somehow, it was relocated just at random by DPW. But
Oh, blame
I
them.
I don't know if it was
I
DPW
see Randy's not
or
here to
not.
defend himself tonight.
No, he's online though, and I'm sure I'll get a text here.
We appreciate everything
The
you do, Randy.
DPW building, the interior insulation has started, it'll be completed tomorrow. And then the interior skin will be put on, blown-in insulation and and electrical. So that's moving, and I'm confident that by the end of the month, that'll be completed as well, and we can get then we'll really put in shape. Part of the budget presentation's coming up. We've solicited bids for a new vinyl fence to surround that property and in that as well. So that's coming together. I would not recommend all of the projects ending in your last month of a fiscal year, but we did it, and we will venture through this and be just fine. I also supplied the council with the budget schedule as it looks for the next 3 meetings, what'll be presented, and move forward to ultimately an adoption on June 27th. So I'll be happy to answer your questions on that.
Jim, on that, are we going to be having any work sessions on these budget topics, or are those just included in the regular session?
I can, if the council feels it. I looked at it and feel that this council will be their 3rd time through. So I think it's kind of semantics. We're looking at a couple hours, whether we go 6 to 8 or 7 to 9. So I was looking at just the 7 to 9 route.
Jim, at the appropriate time, if possible, it'd be great if there was a tour of the DPW building, or the ability to schedule time to just take a
Sure,
look
and
at it.
anytime anyone wants to go through it before, we're always available to go through it, but, so, especially when it's done.
Yeah. I'd like to.
So, what'll happen is all the equipment will be under a roof, and all the yard will be empty, because the plows and stuff that I've set out for years will also be inside one of the barns,
Looks great.
so.
Any conflicts anyone sees with the budget schedule? Available every Monday, all right.
Here we are.
Well, thanks for those updates, Jim. I think we kind of have it backwards. I was going to save my talk for last.
We should have citizens' time.
Oh, that's right, I just showed that to you. Mr. Ball?
Mr. Ball,
would you mind-
can
would
you
you-
come up to this mic, then you'll be captured on this, thank you.
We appreciate you coming in, too.
I haven't had trouble with Zoom for a long time. I wanted to talk to the item dealing with approval of a parade for Memorial Day. When I moved to Vicksburg in 2014, I'd never seen a community parade in which candy was tossed on the street, whether there was anyone to pick it up or eat it or whatever. But I live at Main and Maple, and sometimes that roadkill became Halloween candy. I'm confessing this. But when we got back from Arizona after 3 months, a few weeks ago, and saw what I guess was left over from Little League parade, that was an awful lot of candy. My wife and I walk each day from our home. We end up down Washington to Prairie and back on Prairie to Maine. And the litter, the candy litter on Maine, on Prairie, was sort of awesome, more than usual. And in a couple of places there were, well, I should add that having walked this walk for me for 8 years, we feel a little ownership. And so a couple of days a week we start out with plastic bags, and we pick up Washington, and we pick up Maine, and we pick up often Clark Park. So we came back with the bags, and I filled 2. And I was tempted to come in and bring it with me. Yeah, well. But it seems to me that if we make this a fun thing for the children to throw candy, and I guess it is fun, but who picks it up? Do the kids ever pick it up? Should they? Should they have consequences for what they do? And I don't know whether elected representatives want to get into this with Little League or whoever they're approving this for. But it seems like you should give that some thought. I don't think that's a good idea for kids to throw candy and gleefully forget about it. That's all I have to say. Any questions or comments?
Thank you.
No, I appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm done.
Thank you for coming.
I planned to get this on the agenda time, which would have been earlier.
Yeah.
You're fine. Thanks. That will take us to non-agenda items for any citizens' comments, randomly, openly, at your heart's desire. 1, 2, 3, hearing none?
Mr. Frisbee, we do have, I know Mr. Barnard, Ken Barnard would like to speak. I've known Ken since 1997 when he started at the prosecutor's office here in Kalamazoo. Had the fortunate professional interactions on the same side of the courtroom, I'll say, through the next 18 years. So, Ken, if you want to come up to the podium, say anything for the next 3 minutes. So he's a excellent prosecutor.
Good evening. I'm here to introduce myself as a candidate for the Ninth Circuit Court Judgeship. As many of you may know, Steve Gorsalitz is one of the judges that has to retire along with Alexander Lipsy. They both serve on the circuit court. Judge Gorsalitz is endorsing me, so many of you may know him. As Jim mentioned, I've had the distinct privilege of having one client as a lawyer, and that is you. That is the people of this county. I was hired in 1997 by a guy named Jim Gregor that many of you may have known. For 25 years, I've gone into court and raised my hand and told people, I'm here, Ken Barnard, for the people. I've specialized in some of the most difficult cases that we face, people that we're scared of, not just angry at. I've specialized in child abuse, children that have been sexually abused, children that have been murdered. I've walked into court and represented the people in these things. I know also that there are many people that need our help. I feel that I have the skills to run a courtroom and to make sure justice is ensured. I have compassion for people, and I also believe in following the Constitution and the rule of law. The laws are written and they should be followed. So I will stick around. I have a card with some information about myself. I'd love to have a discussion with you or get to know you over the coming months. August will be a primary, August 2nd, and then the November will be the general election. I'd hoped to introduce my wife. Our daughter had a sporting event and she had to go pick her up. But my wife, Anya, was here earlier. She is works in the Vicksburg Community Schools, which she enjoys very much. So I look forward to meeting you, and thank you for allowing me to introduce myself.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Was there anyone online, Jim, that would like to speak?
I think we have another gentleman in the audience that might wish to speak as well. But if anyone online does, if they want to electronically raise their hand by moving the cursor, it'll bring a hand down at the bottom of the screen, and you can click on that hand.
While we're waiting on that, Mr. Giesler would like to say something.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to apologize for a phone call interrupting the meeting while Scott was speaking. I enjoyed your presentation very much, Scott, but we've had a death in the family in Indianapolis, and I am the designated family member that's trying to make all the arrangements from 200 miles away, and you got to take it when you can. So I do apologize, though. That was not my plan to interrupt this meeting with that phone going off. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Condolences, John.
Good evening. My name is Tom Meldrum, and
Tom,
I
excuse me.
live at
You're going to say it. Go right ahead.
121 West Maple. I live right next door to a former village president, and I live in the house that current village president used to live in. And I had a talk with Tim last summer about the issue I'd like to bring up. And I recently sent him an update on that. I don't know if he's had a chance to read it, but I thought I would like to take a few minutes and inform you all about it, and maybe you can answer some questions for me. The neighbors on both sides of me, 121 is right across from the old Fanny Library annex. And my neighbors on both sides have lawn sprinkler systems. We moved here just a year before the pandemic from Antwerp Township over by Madawan, where we were 30 years, and we love it here. But during the drought last spring, we decided that, like our two neighbors on each side, that we really needed a sprinkler system since we travel quite a bit. We have relatives in other parts of the country. So I went ahead and contracted for a fairly expensive water conserving irrigation system. And in preparation to that, and working with Denise, we ordered a $300 bypass water meter from the city, which took a while to get there. At the very end of June, the irrigation system was put in, and subsequently after that, we received the meter. We immediately found out that the irrigation system could not be used because our water pressure was so low and the flow so low that even the backflow meter wouldn't work on it. Our local plumber came in and took a look at everything and tested the water, and he said that not sufficient flow or pressure. The other problem in putting in the backflow meter is we called the city to turn off the water, couldn't do it. The valve at the sidewalk is frozen. I thought it may be in a partially closed position, which would explain why you have to turn all the water off in the house to get a shower. And it's been terrible water pressure ever since we moved in, and it was not enough. Even though this water conservation system uses very little water at one time, it just wouldn't work. Following that, since then, that was last July, I've been trying to get the city to come out and fix this, and it has just not happened. At one time they did come up and they dug it up when we weren't there, and we have a pile of sand out there now. I've never been able to get information as to why this hasn't been done. Already this year, I've talked to the city, I think 4 times, once before Denise left and several to Christian. I've been giving promises, just like I was all last summer, that they would get out here and fix this. First it was in 3 weeks, then it was in 2 weeks. My last call to Christian, he promised to get back. That was a week ago. I haven't heard anything. I'm really beginning, especially after looking at some of the council meetings, to wonder if they found lead in our service line and now they're not going to do anything about it. And so one of the first things I want to know is, what is your policy for lead lines if the line is broken? Do you fix them? And if you do, or if we don't even have lead in that old part of town, Why doesn't this ever get done? At this point, my wife and I are leaving for an extended 3 weeks, a week from today. And if we get a dry spell like we had last spring, it could ruin a lot of investment we put into our yard and our flower beds and everything. We have no way to water it while we're gone, other than to hire somebody, I guess. Does anybody know why these things don't get fixed?
Well, this is the first I've heard of this tonight, and I understand you've talked to people.
Many times.
Okay. I'll work my way backwards. On the lead line, it's we follow the 2018 Clean Water Act. In your example, and I can assure you, there was no lead found. One of the most significant reasons on the repair is our vac truck for 2 months has been getting a complete rehaul, and we need the vac truck to do this work. The vac truck was scheduled to come back 2 weeks ago. There was, again, I'm told, but it's on the other side of the state, they tell me it was a supply type thing on a part. We were supposed to get it back last Friday. It's supposed to come back this week, and hopefully it does. I can assure you, it's not. That's the main reason of the most recent delay.
Well, let me ask you about the one last summer. It was because the vac truck was broken, and then they came out, and then they never came back. Did the vac truck break again?
Well, I'm more than happy if you want to come to Village Hall, and I'll meet with you and
I
have a
would
better
love to do it.
explanation.
Yeah.
But again, this is the first I've heard of it. I don't have the details. I do obviously know, working with DPW, they're pretty on top of things, but they are human beings. We certainly don't want to cause any friction, but most certainly I can assure you there was no decision made based on lead. And if a line meets the galvanized or lead lines going from the service to the house, the entire main might be scheduled, but we have 20 years to do that. I'd remind the council and the public that in this project, we invested in changing about 65 lines that fell under that 2018 Safe Water Act to the almost $180,000 that were unforeseen. So when we see one identify the concern, we'll make that change for the safety of our citizens in the right way, and the actions show that. So I'll be happy to arrange time to either come out to your house.
Could we do it this week yet, or because I will be gone on Monday for 3?
I will assure you, if you're here after the meeting, or leave your phone number, I will call you, and before you leave town, I'll meet with you. And we'll get a time we can do that.
Great, that would be great. I would really look forward to moving this thing along.
Sure, yep. I sense your frustration, and I apologize for that, but, so.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to lay it out.
Welcome, sir. Thank you, John.
I will say I did drive by the house yesterday and saw that pile of sand and cringed, so I apologize for.
Yes, that pile's been there since August?
Yeah.
Has it really?
I think, Jim, you did do the online and vetted that, so
Yes.
we'll go to trustees' time. Trustee Merrill.
Okay. Well, I had a conversation with Mr. Ball, and I think his point was that when there's going to be a parade, if litter happens, would the person who got the permit clean up after themselves?
I think that's the next step. The parades a couple years ago, if the council remembers, the council had this conversation, took a vote that there wouldn't be candy, and that's what parade organizers are told. And this is what we face in this town. People are told this is the rule, and they don't follow the rule because they think so I think we might have to strengthen that with the financial penalty of the cost of picking it up.
Yeah, good point. I've, similar to Mr. Ball, I've been challenged when I go after a parade and see all that. And
The
it'd be
com-
one thing if there's 5 kids there, they throw a handful, but I mean, literally bags are being just thrown everywhere.
My memory serves me, the council took a vote that there wouldn't be
We did.
candy
We did.
allowed in a parade. That's why we tell people it was a council action.
We
It's-
did. Absolutely.
That was it?
Another thing is, Mr. Ball mentioned in other parts of the country, some people are participating in No Mow May, where you don't mow your lawn in a sense to let the pollinators feed off of the clover flowers and things like that. So that was another thing that Mr. Ball had put forward, and so that's, my neighbor, I think, is participating, so, and so am I. But anyway, that's a thing that would help encourage your bees and get them a little bit of food in the spring.
Thank you. Trustee Holmes.
Just one follow-up comment regarding the parade. I had kids, I think we all had kids at one time. Thank God they move on. Sometimes they come back, that's a different story. Let's just take $200 from the parade organizer and say you get it back so long as the streets are clean, just as we do the pavilion. Go to a Little League parade, go to a homecoming parade. It's part of the festivities, folks. We live in a small town. Let's let people enjoy the moment. I understand I totally get it, but by the same token, I didn't vote to not allow candy to be thrown because I think it's part of a parade, so.
Trustee Olson.
Wake up.
Yeah, wake up, yeah. The last week's been a bad week, and many of you know I lost my mother-in-law on Mother's Day, May the 8th. The ironic part is that 10 years ago, and Mr. Gessler knows my family, 10 years ago on May the 8th, I lost my mother. So talk about 6 degrees of separation. It's also on Friday the 13th, Alma Johnson passed away. You folks don't know her, but you may know her daughter, Gail Atkin, who lives here in Vicksburg. She's basically known as the cat lady. Jim and I know, and even our prosecutor may know Marty Johnson, who was lead detective with the Kalamazoo County Sheriff's Department in the lab evidence section. And Marty and I grew up. His family lived at the end of Xylem, and they treated me just like a member of the family for years. And I was at Marty's dad's funeral a few years ago. The only other thing is no mow. I haven't had time to mow, so that'll be my excuse. The farmers have been hitting me up for hay bales. Yesterday we had the vintage show, first one of the season. It was a little slow, but it was good. Alex stopped by looking for oars. So if anybody's got any oars for sale. May 25th, and I've asked John if he's going to try and make it or not. Schoolcraft Township Hall, if you don't know, once again, TU Avenue and 23rd Street. They want to turn that into a roundabout.
That is insane.
That's what I've said. And I'm sorry, that's my opinion. I stopped, talked to one of the residents the other day, and the lady who's on the corner who's got the nice little garden out front is going to lose that. The gentleman across the street with all the trees, he's going to lose a big chunk of those. They're going to move his driveway roughly 100 feet to the south.
It's insane.
Karen has talked with the Kalamazoo County Road Commission. We plan on going to the meeting with many other people. If they want to put a roundabout at Sprinkle Road and TU Avenue, I don't have a problem. U Avenue and Portage Road, I don't have a problem. I think this personally is a waste of government money that can be used better elsewhere.
Like fixing our streets.
Well, the big problem that most people on that corner have asked for years is gutters and curbing. And they have been turned down time and time again by the county road commission. We just went through 29th Street and S Avenue today, and they're putting curbing in out there. And they're putting in gutters, and I can't understand why. I'm not gonna go there to represent the village of Vicksburg. I'm representing myself as a community member of Schoolcraft Township and the village of Vicksburg. And Jim and I have been to meetings and that before at the Schoolcraft Township Hall on issues. So I don't want my opinion to reflect upon this village council, but as a citizen, I have the right to express my opinion. And I agree with Gail. This money can be used better elsewhere. Trouble is, this project is pretty much set in concrete. So anyhow, but thank you for your time and your sympathies.
Trustee Wagner.
I'm all set, President Frisbee, thank you.
Trustee Reister.
I'm all set too.
Trustee Keller.
We didn't do committee reports, but South County Fire Authority, it's okay. I got a report today that they had 100 calls last month. We'll have a meeting on Wednesday. Wanted to let everybody know, we had Lions Club, I neglected to say this 2 weeks ago. We had White Cane 2 weeks ago, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And the generosity of this community just astounds me. We broke a record that we had set for quite a few years, which all the money that we collect is used here locally for site projects. So my hat's off to the village and the community for that. And as far as the candy in the Little League, years ago I banned candy at the Little League parade when I was on the board, and they wanted to lynch me. So that's a third rail that I understand what Trustee Holmes said. Maybe throwing candy at the Memorial Day parade, yeah, it's a little different atmosphere, but I think we could try to work something out to try to make sure that the kids can have their fun. So, thank you.
To my defense, committee reports isn't on here, but I should have known better.
That's all right.
Would you take a moment now to speak to the Planning Commission?
It's very briefly. The last week's Planning Commission and DDA meeting, there were no actionable items, and really most of the time was really spent by the village manager giving construction updates, as well as discussing the proposed budget for next year. And again, it was proposed, we know, and seeing the budget schedule that Jim gave, that's coming to us. But what was really just some highlights briefly. Property taxes increased over the last 2 years, which resulted in some slight increases in DDA revenue. We discussed the investments made at downtown using DDA monies. Obviously, the parking lot next to the post office was significant, large expenditure. And also the 4-inch water lines to the buildings. Also, what was great to hear is that the new grant program using DDA monies and then also projected monies from the foundation to incentivize buildings owners to update their buildings. I've been a strong advocate of this private-public type venture, and I'm ecstatic to see that this is something that we're undertaking as a village because it's very progressive, and I think it's the right thing to do. And also the projected revenue for the holiday parade is around $6,000, which was really interesting to see as well. I know it's well attended and people appreciate it, but it was great to see. I know that staff does a great job of promoting that, and it was great to see that there was that projection of revenue that we'll see this year with the event. And that's pretty much it.
Thank you, sir. So the South County is next week, Cats is Wednesday, so we'll have an update at our next meeting on those. And I had nothing really other than to thank everybody tonight for being here, and just to reemphasize that this is being broadcasted on YouTube Live, so be sure to go to the channel and hit subscribe. It brings us all kind of benefits. Some of you younger guys might know what those are, but
I appreciate you looking at me when you say younger and not Carl, by the way. I really do.
Looked right by him, didn't I?
You are definitely a baby.
All right. Well, that being all for the evening, would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, have a good night.